Well, in a time of incredible financial insecurity, Labor is under fire over accusations of breaking an election promise, this time impacting our retirement savings. Labor is proposing to stop tax concessions for super at $3 million and legislating the purpose of super. The Federal Coalition says they'll take the fight to Labor on this issue. And joining me now is Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor. Thank you for your time tonight. Labor says the majority
Thanks for having me, Shari.
Labor says the majority of people have an average super balance of about $150,000. They say 2/3 of Australians have less than $100,000 in super. And they say that it's only people with over $3 million in their super who would be affected by these changes and that they don't need the tax concessions. Do you think people with more than $3 million in their super do need tax concessions?
Well, the starting point here, Shari, is that this is Australians' money, not Labor's money, to tax and spend as they see fit. And importantly, Labor made a very clear commitment, the Prime Minister made a very clear commitment before the last election that he wasn't going to change the playing field, move the goalposts when it came to superannuation. Now, he is proposing to do exactly that. We don't know exactly how. We do know that they've suggested they want to tax more. We also know they want to spend superannuation on their pet projects. And we had the Assistant Treasurer out there today saying that this is Australian superannuation is a lot of honey that he wants to spread around. Now, that is a very sticky metaphor for a very tricky government that is breaking election promises on a near daily basis.
Labor has hit back at this, saying that they're not pet projects, they're for things like aged care. Do you think this money shouldn't go to aged care?
No, I think this money should be invested in the financial interests of the investors in the funds, the members of the superannuation funds. That's how it should be invested. It shouldn't be instructed by government. Look, I don't go to Jim Chalmers to give me investment advice, and I don't think he should be giving investment advice. I think he should be leaving it to the investors and to their fund managers to invest in what gives them the best possible returns and the best chance for a secure retirement. That's the purpose of super. It's very clear.
Labor also says it can't afford to keep tax concessions for super for people with more than $3 million in their super funds. Do you agree, as Shadow Treasurer, that something has to give in the budget with inflation as high as it is?
Well, you know what? Labor always wants to tax more, and they'll look for any which way to do it. We've seen legislation come into the parliament with a very broad hit on franking credits. We know they want to get rid of the stage 3 tax cuts, and now they're coming after your super. We don't know exactly what the proposal is. The Assistant Treasurer was talking about all sorts of numbers today when he was talking about it. Labor will look for any way to come after your super. But, Shari, the starting point here is so important. Australians' superannuation is their money. It's not the government's money. It's not the Labor Party's money. It's their money. And it's not for the Labor government to tax and spend it out how it sees fit.
The other thing that the Treasurer has suggested is legislating the purpose of superannuation. Is this something the Coalition will block, this sort of legislation?
Well, we're actually very supportive of having a legislated purpose of super, as long as it's the right purpose for super. And that means to help people to have a secure, prosperous retirement. That's what we want to see. We know that super can add to that. We also know that
that's at odds with the Coalition election promise that obviously didn't get up, but the Coalition wanted to allow young people to access their superannuation to buy a first home. So if it was legislated that it would need to remain there for their retirement, then those sort of ideas that the Coalition took to the election probably wouldn't be possible.
Well, no, I don't agree with that. And I was about to say that we also know that while superannuation can support a prosperous retirement, a secure retirement, so too, more than anything, can owning a home. In fact, the single factor that we know is the best indicator of a prosperous, secure retirement is owning your own home. So we do think that is part of what superannuation should be able to support. Now, it's a bizarre situation when your super fund can invest in anybody's home except your own. It's a ridiculous situation.
Well, I want to ask
so we think it's always about a secure, prosperous retirement, and a house as well as your superannuation fund can contribute to that.
And that was a very popular policy, not popular enough to put Scott Morrison back in the lodge, but it was popular. Now, I want to ask you about Wayne Swan entering the debate today. He is chair of Cbus Industry Super Fund. What did you think of his intervention?
Well, it's the same sort of thing you always see from Wayne Swan. I mean, he trained Jim Chalmers, so it's pretty much in line with what Jim Chalmers wants, which is to tax Australians more. That's how Labor makes ends meet. It comes after your money. That's always how it does it. It's what Wayne Swan wanted to do. It's what Jim Chalmers wants to do. So it's more of the same. And we shouldn't be surprised because they come from the same stable.
We've also seen news today, although we've been covering it on the show the whole week, that without changing the tax thresholds, Labor would be presiding over a historic tax increase in real wages. Do you think the tax thresholds should shift?
You're talking about the income tax thresholds, are you, Shari?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, there is no doubt that inflation is actually going to raise the average rate of income tax for Australians through what's known as bracket creep. More of your income goes into higher tax brackets. That's why the stage 3 tax cuts are so important, because they take some of that bracket creep away. And we don't want to see people paying more tax because of inflation. I think Labor does want to see people paying more tax because of inflation, and that's why we saw the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, a few months back floating this idea of getting rid of the stage 3 tax cuts. So it is very important that inflation isn't a hidden, sneaky tax increase. Labor will always look for a hidden, sneaky tax increase, Shari, but that's why the stage 3 tax cuts are so important. It takes that away.